Now, Hong Kong has scrapped most of its remaining coronavirus restrictions following the lead of mainland China and giving rise to fears amongst Hong Kongers about a new wave of infections. Now, that could prove particularly dangerous for the island's elderly population, many of whom have refused COVID vaccinations, despite the higher death rates amongst their age group. DW's Phoebe Kong spoke to one senior whose decision not to protect herself is driven by a fear of the vaccine's extremely rare side effects.
Mrs. Wu is getting ready to deliver some food to her husband at her home for the elderly. She used to visit him every day until 3 years ago. The pandemic put a stop to that.
I brought him some biscuits today. Unvaccinated families are only allowed to leave the food at the entrance and let the staff pass it on. I can only talk to him over the phone.
It's only one of a variety of places in Hong Kong that still ban unvaccinated people. Until last week, Mrs. Wu couldn't go to restaurants or public markets. Grocery shopping was also limited. Like hundreds of thousands of senior citizens in the city, Mrs. Wu stands firm against vaccination. Despite years-long inconveniences and a deadly outbreak last year. While she's a bit worried about catching COVID, she is far more concerned by potential side effects of the jab.
What if my body cannot handle the vaccine? I'm scared of the side effects. It can't be undone. Not to mention, it doesn't guarantee 100% protection. The severity of the disease depends on how strong people are too.
This hesitancy is also attributed to the novelty of COVID vaccines and mistrust of the authorities. 15% of Hong Kongers 60 years or older remain unvaccinated, and those who have gotten jabbed generally have had a domestically developed COVID shot. The German-made mRNA vaccine is available in Hong Kong, but it's not a popular option for the elderly here. Many of them prefer the Chinese vaccine because they say it has milder side effects, even if it's less effective in protecting against severe illness. As Hong Kong has lifted most of its COVID restrictions and prepares to fully open its border with mainland China, concern over an influx of infections is growing. That's something Mrs. Wu has discussed with her relatives on the mainland as well.
It's said that COVID can be treated as a cold now.
For almost 3 years, she has spent most of her time at home. Mrs. Wu barely left her neighborhood and cut off nearly all her social contacts to avoid infection.
I'm not very anxious about the opening up. I'm confident in my own immunity as I seldom get sick. It's my freedom to choose not to get the jab. I don't blame anyone if I contract the virus.
However, now may not be the best moment for her to lower her guard. Hong Kong is bracing itself for another surge of the coronavirus.
Let's take a closer look at this with Professor Dale Fisher, who chairs the World Health Organization's Global Outbreak Alert and Response Network. He joins us from Singapore. Welcome to DW, Professor Fisher. So 2 years into this pandemic, and it seems strange to my ears to hear someone talking about this is my choice. It's only like a cold. I don't trust the vaccines. What is holding back the message from getting to so many people still?
Yeah, thanks, Phil. It is a little bit like Groundhog Day, and it's like we're seeing everything that happened last year happen again this year in China. But this is quite a specific issue. We found it in Singapore in the middle of last year when we were vaccinating our elderly people. Hong Kong realised it, and it's a very natural thing, I guess, being cultural. It's we found that people had a fatalistic attitude. If I get COVID, so be it. They were worried about the side effects. They were worried it might upset their comorbidities, their heart disease and things like that. But of course, people with heart disease are more likely to benefit from the vaccine. So You know, it is a problem. In Singapore, we got down to sending out teams of people to individual homes to talk to individuals to try and explain to them to get them vaccinated, especially when you see a surge on the horizon.
And so do you expect the same thing to happen in Hong Kong without intervention? The low vaccination rates having a catastrophic effect after the easing of restrictions on mainland China?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's not about the country. It's any country that's experiencing a surge in cases, if they've got a large percentage of the vulnerable population, particularly the elderly, not vaccinated and not boosted, you know, as appropriately, then you're going to see a lot of severe illness and you're going to see health systems overwhelmed. So yeah, you'd have to say that's a risk for Hong Kong, but it's a risk for any country if they have a surge and they've let vaccinations and boosters get away from them.
We heard this morning that the European Union is offering some of its vaccines to China for free. Do you think that offer is likely to be taken up? And what sort of difference would it make if it was?
Well, yeah, I mean, as we've seen last year, or the last 2 years, it's not only about availability. It's about convincing people that it's a good thing to do, that it can be life-saving, it can protect their health system. So just, if you like, plopping the vaccine out there, it's certainly a good thing to do, and it's what countries should do when a neighbour is suffering. So it's certainly good to offer it, but that has to be paired with a whole you know, vaccine promotion, a whole system. And as is inherent in your question, there's going to be some reluctance because it would seem that the Chinese people are very happy with the Chinese vaccines, which, you know, as we know, are probably less effective in preventing severe disease.
All right, Professor, thanks for that. Professor Dale Fisher from the WHO's Global Outbreak Alert and Response Network.